Hi everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about chapter 5 in your book, which is arguably the most important part of your campaign because it really gets things going. We're going to be talking about segmenting and targeting your audience. You've probably heard me say before that one of the challenges with this class is people tend to put the cart before the horse. And when I say come up with a campaign or this is what you're going to do, immediately their brain starts plugging in all the different details, specifically as they relate to target behaviors. So you tend to think about what you want people to do. You say, I want them to stop driving while they text, or I want them to give up smoking, or I want them to stop taking opiates, for whatever the case is, right? But the truth is that your book and other campaign designers, obviously, don't even go into figuring out what they want the target behavior to be until they know who their audience is. And the reason for that is because really this is all about who do you want to help, right? So the logic here is kind of like you need to figure out what your goal is in terms of who you want to help. And then if you know who you want to help, then you can better figure out what the best way to help them is. Taking the classic example of smoking, for instance, if you decide that who you want to help are teenagers, right? Maybe getting them to stop smoking isn't as good as, for instance, a target behavior that would be not having them smoke to begin with. Whereas preventing smoking for an audience that is, in their 40s doesn't make as much sense because most people in their 40s who smoke, right, have been doing it for a long time. So, and they're not at a high risk to start smoking because of peer pressure or something like that. And so all of these things you see go under the basic umbrella of the topic of smoking. But really, who your audience is for the campaign is what's going to shape the rest of your decisions, including what target behavior you want to target, how you want to develop your messages, how you think about appealing to the people that you're talking to and things like that. So what this chapter is all geared around is helping you think about what kind of audience do you want to focus on. By now, hopefully you have a really good topic in mind for what you want to focus on. So now what you need to really ask yourself is, which audience makes the most sense for me to target? There could be, and hopefully there is actually, lots of potential audiences that could come to mind. So let's say you're trying to increase increase breastfeeding, okay? Or your topic's breastfeeding, fine. There's different audiences. So you could have moms in general everywhere. You could have younger moms, older moms, high-income moms, low-income moms, African-American moms, minority moms in general, right? All of these people could be different people who would be good groups to target. But the problem is if you focus on all of them, you might not be as effective because you might pick, there might not be the same target behavior or message strategies that work for one group. So what this chapter is all set up about doing is saying, take all the different audiences that you think could benefit from a campaign on your topic and try to narrow it down to the audience that makes the most sense to work with. And this is where I'm going to bring your worksheet in. I don't normally do this, but you're going to have a couple of different, let's see, can you kind of see that? I mean, again, this is on your worksheet this week, but you see how there's this matrix, I call it like a decision matrix. Your book has one the same thing, like if you look on page 144, kinda, actually, hold on, let me see, where is the, that's a different decision matrix. Not the one I was thinking of. Well, I can't find it off the top of my head. Yeah, there we go. Well, it's not really, this is the same stuff that's in your matrix right here. I don't know why I hold this up for you. It's not like you could read. On page 143, down there, see that list right there? It's got the same sort of things that are in this list right here. And what they're telling you to do is basically use this as a worksheet, okay? So you're going to say, who are my potential target audiences? So let's take the breastfeeding thing. Let's say African American moms is one target. You could say young moms, let's say, under the age of 25 is another one. You could say older moms, right? Let's say over the age of 35, okay? And that'll give you three different segments, okay? Then it asks you, okay, well, what's the size of these groups? So what you're trying to figure out is what's the actual or relative size of this group. So you're trying to say, well, are African American moms a bigger group of potential breastfeeders than, let's say, older moms or younger moms? So you'll have to, and I haven't done the research on this, but you sort of have to weigh that out. Maybe they're about the same size, so that's fine. If they do, then what you would do is you'd say, oh, they're all very high, right? Like, so you'd give them all fives, because 5 would be very high. Then you say, well, what's the problem incidence? How significant is the contribution that this group makes to the social problem you want to solve? Well, for instance, I know that African American women have a very high rate of not breastfeeding. I know that older moms sometimes have trouble with it, but generally, I don't think that. Again, I'm making this up. I'm sorry. It's just for the sake. Don't go and quote me on this. This is not my area of expertise. Just for demonstration purposes. Older moms, they sometimes have more trouble breastfeeding, but in general, they're more, willing to do it, so their problem incidence isn't as great. Whereas younger moms, like African American moms, often, because it seems like an inconvenience for them or whatever, they are not as willing to do it. So in that case, I would say, okay, the problem incidence for African American moms is very high, so I'd give them a 5, and then I'd say the problem incidence for younger moms is very high, but maybe I would only give older moms a 3. So right now you can see everybody got a 5 in the first column, only 2 groups got a 5 in the second column, so now 2 groups are sort of in the running. And the idea is you do this for all these different criteria. So let's talk about the next one, readiness to act. How concerned is the target audience with the social problem, with the problem? The reason we care about that is because sometimes, even if an audience is, let's say, making a really big contribution to the problem, like their problem incidence is huge, if they're not willing to act, they might not be worth messing with. Or you could argue that they're completely worth messing with for that reason. You kind of have to make this argument. But people who are ready to act tend to be more persuadable and more open to a campaign. So you tend to want to look for the people that are looking to be persuaded, right? So that's another thing you're going to want to rank them on. Ability to reach. So here's another thing. If, let's say, even if you know that somebody's willing to act and somebody is really making a big contribution to the problem, but if you're not able to find those people, if you can't reach them with campaign messages, if they're maybe, for instance, hard to find because they don't self-identify. Like I had a friend who worked on a campaign about mental illness, and the problem with mental illness is that not everybody discloses that they have a mental illness, and some people aren't even aware of it. That makes them a harder group to reach sometimes because you don't exactly know who you're targeting, right? So the reach is difficult. But I don't know, in the case of, women that you're trying to persuade to breastfeed, or maybe, depends on what your target behavior is, that's next week, depending on people who you want to maybe breastfeed their children for longer, or whatever the case is, they might be easier to reach because you can work with hospitals or something. Again, these are all things that you kind of have to figure out, but you have to be able to make an argument for. So basically you take those 4 things: size, problem incidence, readiness to act, and ability to reach. And then all of your different audiences down here should have a little score for it. And then in this last column, you add it up. And what's the average, that everybody got? And look, it could be that everybody comes out with the same exact score, in which case then you'll have to sort of make an argument for all of these audiences are equally good to gear a campaign towards, but I'm going to go with this one because of X. But if a score comes out where it's like one audience has a really high score, that helps you figure out, okay, I think this is where we need to go. The other audiences also need a good campaign, but this is the most practical way for us to focus our energy right now. So that's the point of this worksheet. But then below, and you're going to start seeing this a lot in your worksheet, so that's why I want to spend some time on it. You do your math up here, so to speak. It's not real math. I mean, there's a little math, but it's not really math. You do your math up here, but then number 4, it's a really long question because I have a lot of details. What I want you to do is, now you've done all your homework up here in the decision matrix, now I want you to write out what you did up here. So I want you to take the logic that you did up here where you're comparing, oh, well, this group's bigger than that group, and this group has a higher problem incidence than that group, and et cetera, et cetera. And I want you to explain things like, oh, well, I know this group has a higher readiness to act because compared to teenagers, older people, have a higher perception of risk, which actually there is research to support that. Teenagers don't have a high mortality salience. Like, they don't think that things are is likely to affect them. So a lot of times teenagers, for instance, are less willing to act. So you can put that down there if they're one of your groups. So I want you to write out all this logic and write it in a way that you could hopefully put this into your final proposal. So if you're writing up a final proposal, trying to get funding for a campaign, your funders are going to want to know, like, okay, well, why are you focusing on this audience? This is your opportunity to take that decision matrix. And you don't actually have to talk about the numbers. That's just more for your homework, right? What I want you to do is take the logic, all of the little decisions that you made up there, all of the comparisons where you're saying, well, relative to this group seems better. And I want you to articulate that in a paragraph or two, really analyzing your decision and convincing somebody why this is the best audience to focus on. Your evidence for why your audience is the best to focus on should be up here. But then you need to, in your own words below, write it in such a way that you're proposing that this audience should be the focus of your campaign. And then what's going to happen is next week you're going to do a very similar thing, except you're going to do the same exact sort of decision matrix and then write it out for when you're trying to decide what your target behavior is. As I mentioned at the very beginning, the whole point is like, once you know who your audience is, you can decide, okay, given this audience, what behavior is most reasonable to ask of them to do. In the breastfeeding example, again, maybe it's not about saying that somebody has to breastfeed all the time. You just want to increase the amount that they're breastfeeding. There's different target behaviors and different cells, right? Different products, which is, again, this is like marketing, except we're just marketing a social behavior. Different products are going to have different appeals for your audience. So once you know who your audience is, you'll be able to come up with hopefully a better product for them and have a much more effective campaign. Okay, I really hope this makes sense. I really, I didn't go over a lot of all the nitty gritty in the chapter, though of course there's a lot there. I really just want you to focus on predominantly thinking about the different audiences. Hopefully you can come up with about 3 different audiences that would be good groups to target given the topic that you're interested in. And then I want you to focus on size, problem incidence, readiness to act, and ability to reach, and compare all 3 of those audiences on those different components, give them a score, and then write up sort of your decision in the thing below. If any of this is unclear, obviously, just like always, please feel free to email me. And sometimes I'm even willing to, I don't like to grade papers before I have to, because it's just, if I graded everybody's paper, I'd end up in some cases grading 2 papers a week instead of 1. So I don't want to do that. But at the same time, I'm totally happy to like workshop with you with some of this stuff. And if you want to send me like, hey, so I'm thinking like my target behavior is getting people to conserve water. And I think one of my target audiences are, low income people who live in Morgantown. Another one of my target audiences is middle class people who live in Morgantown, or like whatever. And you wanted to go run through some of this stuff. I'm really happy to do that. Just give me a little advance notice, and we can work on it together. So good luck. Looking forward to reading this. Again, the audience is key. So if we get this stuff right, the rest of your campaign's downhill, mostly downhill. Smooth sailing, smoother sailing. So. All right, have a good week. Bye.